Oh, I respect Mike Malone as a coach. I think he's a decent coach. I don't necessarily like the psychological approach he's taken with this series and his team, calling them Pintos and us Maseratis, and we just got to give a full effort. To me, it sounds like he's conceded the series and he just wants them to play with pride. But here we are in Denver, Game 3. The first very noticeable thing was this neutral crowd. It never got that loud because it was probably 30% Warrior fans. Denver game plan, let's get Aaron Gordon going. We need him. Here's the double stagger, nice leaning lob. But here's the chess match you're going to see throughout the playoffs. Teams want to put bigger wings on Poole and Steph. Well, we're going to put Clay on the block and break you down like we're playing Tetris. Monte Morris, way too small. To be honest with you, I don't know if anybody can guard Jordan Poole. If you're going to show up at a pool party, you got to bring a towel because you're going to get wet. And I thought AG just didn't distance manage well. You have the length and size advantage. Why are you crowding him 30 feet from the basket? Draymond continues the playoff three-point shooting. He now stands at 37% through these 3 games. AG, he's still a good big athlete, right? But he doesn't have that bounce he once had. And you see it affect him around the rim particularly. And that's the name of the game. Once you start to lose a step, how do you adapt? I thought the refs did a pretty nice job letting them play early on. And then just the nuance of reading a player. Look at Clay's body language, landing, and rhythm when he lets this go. It was just a sign, oh, he's feeling good. He's feeling good. And, we all kind of anticipated the woes of Game 3s for this team, but I think they also understand they're no longer as dominant as they once were to take some of these games for granted like we had seen in the past of the dynasty. Kevon Looney understood, look, I'm here for a good time, not a long time. He was picking them up left and right, 2 quick ones. Sent the PTSD lineup out there early on. Rare mental mistake here from Draymond. You got to let Monte Morris slash to the basket. I'm not leaving Jokic out there. And then one of my pet peeves, you guys probably heard me talk about, bounce passing to the corner shooter. It either takes the shot away or it makes it a much more difficult shot. Wiggins patiently gives it back to Draymond. Denver shot the ball well, and I think they're at this stage in this series where it's like, well, fuck it. We ain't got no pressure. We ain't supposed to win. So they were letting it fly as to be expected. Will Barton transition 3-ball, and the vaunted new death lineup didn't look too great to start. As amazing as Poole has been, there are still instances where he's still trying to get style points rather than make the easy basketball play. It's something we just have to accept with his creativity and flash. Austin Rivers apparently got his balloon knot tied back up because he was out there splashing on us. When you're a maybe shooter, this is what you got to do. GP2, the least amount of motion possible. Very simple footwork, quick, compact release. And something that maybe hasn't been noticed or talked about enough here is in these first 3 playoff games, Gary Payton has been the same exact player he's been all year for us. And that's what you need out of your role players. You might have heard Jim Jackson talking about Ja Morant hitting the floor too much. Well, the same could be said for Jordan Poole here. He doesn't tuck his chin and get some whiplash on the neck. We know he's tough as nails, right? But you got to protect yourself. And Otto, listen, man, look, that wasn't out of rhythm, but it wasn't his rhythm. So he's definitely thinking about those. Steph, again, splitting out of the high pick and roll, and you can just see how fresh his legs are even in that altitude. I think this was the most Clay-like offensive game we've seen thus far. 1 dribble pulley, and he just picked his spots so well. You heard the TNT boys talking about it at halftime. Boogie is really the last of a dying breed as far as punishing big men. A dude that's just not going to let a smaller guy guard him, and they took advantage of that here in the second quarter. And then this is just becoming part of the signature push-up package, the scamper in the corner, all while staying in bounds. Now he hits the Smitty, and look, man, there's some Ja similarities. Clearly, he's not the vertical athlete that Ja is, but as far as like a first step and the ability to use deception combined with elite quickness, you see feeding off Boogie, the swing, Rivers' second 3 of the quarter. I still think we were giving Jokic too much respect at the rim. There were a lot of instances where it was like, yo, just jump into this guy. Just try to elevate on him, but you can see the frenetic pace that Steph was keeping when he was in the game. Same spot, same result for the second. And then again, Draymond not really testing Jokic or trying to get him in foul trouble. And look, Draymond had a phenomenal game. I'm just pointing out there are instances here where he's just going to have to be more aggressive and be willing to get to the line. Gary Payton, 4 of 4, 11 points in 14 minutes. Can you spell mid-level exception? Now, this was a bad sign out of the timeout to not be able to execute from Denver. And I thought the crowd was a big deal because This young team was trying to rally and try to find some belief and some motivation, and you didn't get the typical Game 3 crowd in that type of scenario. Another example of Jordan Poole's flashy style here. Watch him high pocket the ball, and because of that, the pass was a beat late, and Draymond was sure to let him know, like, hey, man, just make the simple play. Speaking of pocket passes, though, this would be my one piece of advice for the chef is, look, the scouting report has high hands on you, bro. If you can start to implement the pocket pass and break that tendency, you're going to cut your turnovers in half. Again, AG in that bounce. And look, he can still get up, but he has to consciously elevate now. When you're young, it's effortless. Just ask Kuminga. Steph, 4 turnovers, and they were sloppy. They weren't necessary. I bring up that term appropriate fear again because I feel like the Warriors struggled with that at times throughout this game. But you know the rule of thumb. The more careless Steph is with the ball, the better he shoots. You talk about championship characteristics, closing quarters and halves strong. Look at Wiggins touch the square and then an outlet pass to Steph for the and one. And so instead of a 5-point game at the half, it's back up 10. An interesting predicament you see throughout the playoffs is, wouldn't you make the argument that Jokic wants Looney in the game? Like Denver wants Looney in the game. So for him to pick up his 4th foul this early into the 3rd quarter, not sure if that helps or hurts Denver. You see the lack of shot making from AG. And then you know who this low-key looked like? Young Monte Ellis, the one-man fast break. Denver was eating in the left corner. They hit 11 threes. It felt like almost all of them came from there. The problem was we hit 18 of them. And basketball is so funny. It's so subjective. Who do you blame this turnover on? Clay, Draymond, Looney for having no sorts of offensive gravity, or is it just a play by Monte Morris? To me, I'd say that's a forced turnover. I think that's a good play from Monte Morris. And then a month ago, this would have been so off balance. Look at him go straight up and down, signature. So Draymond's going to roll the ankle here. And what I appreciate about Draymond and the truly tough players are, yeah, guys will play through ankles, but a lot of guys will take every opportunity they can the rest of the game to let you know how much their ankle hurts and how much they're thinking about it. Draymond, as tough as they come, obviously, but once he tweaks something or hurts something, he's not going to show you or let you know that it's bothering him. Now, Jokic with the Dirk fade, they take their first lead for the first time since early in the first quarter. And for the first time really in this series, it felt like momentum was swinging their way. They go on a run, and now Jordan Poole's on the bench holding that mysterious elbow injury. Real time, I would have been much more freaked out about it, except for the fact that he's been doing this like the last month of the season, and they're just playing it tight to the vest. Wouldn't be surprised come the summer if they announce Poole like need some sort of minor elbow cleanup or something, right? Non-shooting arm is the big thing with that, right? And so the Warriors, championship DNA, responded to the Nuggets run. It was funny. It was almost like they were like, oh, all right, y'all want to get competitive here? Cool. We want some run. Otto Porter Jr., I know he didn't shoot well, but he was still a plus 16. Splash break, and just like that, the lead is gone. And so out of the timeout, this is a pretty cool play here. Draymond has to be early so Jokic doesn't catch the ball too deep, and so they play on it, and he just slips to the foul line rather than the other block. They get the switch, and then that floater's automatic. It was pretty clear from the start, much like with Clay, Steph woke up in rhythm. This is a tough, deep 2. What do you call it when your hypothesis turns out to be correct? Because that's what it looks like with Steph, right? He has come back recharged, and he's moving like he did to start the season. That's what's happened. Bones Highland again in that left corner with the tippy-toe deep corner 3 to answer and tie this game. The crowd's so mid, though. There were these spurts from the Nuggets where if they had a ruckus arena, it would have made things so much more difficult on us. AG from no man's land, but then once again to finish the quarter, Rivers decides to flop and Jordan Poole all the jelly, but couldn't get the roll. And so for the first time in the series, we've got ourselves a 4th quarter. They lift Boogie early, easy and 1 for Poole. It's hilarious, though, because you see the pivot call all the time. Poole literally goes up and down right in front of the ref. We get away with it and turns into a 3-ball. Watch the short closeout and angle Andre takes, causes Boogie to travel. I guess it goes without saying, Ig back from the neck spasms. Look, I got a theory with Belly. I think coming from the Euro League where they play so much harder play to play, he seems more comfortable in the playoffs where a pump fake, all his little deception and slow stuff works more because he can use the aggressive defense against itself. And you see that with slower, deceptive players. Slow-mo comes to mind. Again, Otto, plus 16. He actually finished well going downhill. It's the jumper that's not there. So Denver comes back with their starters at the 9-minute mark. Steph still with a 30-minute pitch count. I would have potentially broken it with the understanding of, look, if we get this, we probably sweep, and he gets all the rest he needs. But you knew Steve would stick to the script. Here's a swing. AG 18-12, finally giving them what they need. That should be his baseline. That should be his average game. Draymond and Andre out there at times, they just weren't putting enough pressure on the defense, but that's where vintage Clay comes in with the bailout shots. That's when he can take tough ones, and that's not a tough one to his standard when he has his legs, but it just worked out in true Warrior form. The answer from Jokic, he knocks it down, shot it much more confidently last night, and then still DRE. This is the type of pressure I want to see him put on the rim at times. I understand he's got to preserve himself in his old age, but he's still got to remain a threat and keep the defense honest. So both teams got into the penalty here quick. The problem was we shot 64% from the foul line last night. Steph missed some, Poole missed some. You know Draymond and Wiggins were tricking him. Now, to me, this is one Andre's got to take. I know he's waiting for the bailout and waiting for his shooters, but that's just such a more difficult shot than what Andre was presented with. Andrew, I know Warriors Twitter was on his neck until they weren't, but there's some nuance to what he does here. You look at this closeout in the corner. If this is D. Lee, that's probably a splash, right? It's not just the closeout. It's his reputation as a freaky athlete that puts doubt in the shooter's mind. Briefly, I started to worry about the refs and what are they going to try to do at the end of this game here. But then I realized, like, listen, if there's going to be any type of conspiracy shit, they're going to want to push the Warriors through the finals. That's what's best for the NBA. And then ultimately, when's the last time you saw Steph in a fourth quarter walk the ball up and come off a screen with airspace? So as good as we looked, we also have to understand that stylistically, I mean, we were at the Golden Corral. Now, Joker looked much better from the three-point line, so he got Draymond in the air here on this pump fake, and he's going to rumble into the paint and retake the lead here. I've talked about the balance of chemistry on this roster and how important it is for these young guys to be around the championship vets. At the same time, they're giving back to the vets because for Steph, Clay, and Dre in this scenario here, they don't really need this game, right? How motivated are they? Well, Jordan Poole's hungry. He ain't ever been here. So he's like, let's keep our foot on the pedal. And look, that's not to say that the vets didn't want this game. Of course they did, but there is an underlining hunger that they just can't possibly have in this scenario that the youngsters do. Wiggins turning down free throws, but just like with the vaccination, Andrew Wiggins in the nick of time shows up for us. Now on the defensive end, he somehow gets switched onto Jokic deep in the restricted area and extends, leaps, and gets the stop. Now, 1 point game here. Steph tries to deliver the dagger, and it's big vax on the motherfucking glass. Jordan Poole, even his superficial moves are super official. I don't know how he gets that without glass. And then you talk about fuel for the game. Watch Aaron Gordon turn his back way too soon. You see him try to hit the move with too much space between he and Steph. Steph slides over and takes the biggest charge call of the series thus far. After a Clay corner miss, watch Jokic get the switch and then clear out for Will Barton. Embiid would never. Hey, it is what it is. That's what the tape shows. He backed off that moment right there with under a minute to go in a three-point game, and now you got a Wiggins-Steph pick and roll, and Steph says, you want to go night-night? It's time to go night-night. Steph with a different type of energy last night. And so one last shot. Draymond, 5 fouls on an island with the MVP, and this is what he saw.
On the first dribble when he hit me, I felt like I still had inside position. And then he took the second one, and it was far away from his body. And so I'm already thinking right there, if he take one more dribble, I'm stabbing at it. And I feel like my body is released enough from here to where I can get a reach, and if I don't get it, still be in good position. And so, I just saw the dribble was high and it was away from his body, and I just went for it, and I was able to get my hand on it.
These are the plays and the moments that you remember that build your legacy. We know Draymond's not a stat guy, right? But it's like, well, how good was Draymond Green? You kind of had to be there, right? You had to feel it. You had to feel his presence in real time to understand what he brings to the table. I love them giving Wiggs his flowers for coming up clutch. in just a big game, you see how much of a war of attrition these playoffs have already turned into. So the least amount of games you can play to get to the next series becomes super vital. And now at this point, Denver on a neutral site for game 4, how much fight do they have left? Well, we'll see. I'm out, y'all.